All right, so sorry about the interruptions. Kiva actually had to go out to use the restroom, which was fine. So as I was saying with Mr. A, he's just going off and having a little drink. Nice job, sir. Ready? Oh, he's finding some crumbs. Good job. So with the handsome guy, when working, like I was mentioning earlier a little bit, with the shaping, capturing, or luring, make sure that, again, with luring, you try to fade it out as quickly as you can. If he's doing quite well with some of his skills, go ahead and ask for it with the certain cue word, or some people will call it a command. I tend to normally call it a cue versus a command. A lot of times commands seem more authoritative, like where I command you to do something, and then if you don't do it, there might be then repercussions. So I find it can be really helpful to be almost, could you offer this behavior, more of a can you versus you must. Because for a lot of dogs, being unable to offer something typically goes and shows you a little window as to how they're feeling when it comes to comfort range or understanding, or for their threshold for sometimes the environment. So, ready? So with Mr. A, we're gonna go ahead and warm up a little bit with some loose leash walking. So obviously for the loose leash walking, like we mentioned a little bit earlier, is you will also feel free to use this sort of practice in and around the yard or home if it's a safe place to do so, off gear. If, for example, you're working this outside and Mr. Handsome doesn't have a safe or secure spot to practice in, I would recommend to practice this in, for example, with your leash on or a longer training lead. So this way, Mr. A, I don't mind if he's working the left side or the right side, like I've mentioned earlier. The main goal is that we're just creating this lovely association that coming nearby has great value, and being next to you is another great way to build up that connection. Because for most pups, remember that a lot of these skills don't have very much value. So again, we're depositing into that bank account the ability for your puppy to want to offer that skill set once more. So right here, we're going to go ahead and keep meandering. You can, again, start to put this on a cue. Like, so for some folks, it might be with me, let's go. It could be heel if you want it to be. But I recommend pick a slogan that makes sense to you guys and your household. Nice job, sir. So, and typically you could be going yes and then marking these little moments when he's by your side. If sometimes you space and you're just feeding for all the good, your pup is still getting a reinforcement while being in the position or in the setup you would like to have happen again. So that could, again, just be a good way to reinforce the concepts you want him to try again for later. So with the handsome guy, maybe we'll work a little bit with our wait. So a wait, again, is where your gorgeous guy or gal could be waiting for a few seconds, and then you're going to call them to you. You could, and I'm just right now just feeding him for being good and hanging out with me. So let's say, for example, you're doing waits for waiting before being fed, or wait before hopping out of the car, or wait before going in and out of the crate, whatever it might be, is make sure, and we always have itches, so feel free, is make sure, though, whenever you're working with a stationary position, like a holding back moment, that you're not pairing it with something stressful or overwhelming. So some folks will be telling the dog over and over to wait at the doorway, but the dog is either overwhelmed, stressed, too excited, and now as you're squealing, wait, 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 or sit, wait, your babe's response to the cue might be going out the window, but then they might be pairing holding back with stress and overwhelming situations. So we want to make sure that we're not poisoning the cue or the exercise. Ready? Miss Kay, I think, is trying to wrestle with her friends. Ready? Nice job. So if, let's say, we're going to work a little bit with that weight, I just wanted to get him up and wiggling for a second before I ask him to settle. So we're going to get a sit. I might reinforce him for that beautiful first starting point. Then I'm going to go ahead and say wait, give him a second or two to hold back, and then go, Allston, come. And he's like, my brain melted. Yes, good boy. If you ever have a moment where there's hesitation, it could be your puppy's not really sure. Remember that generalizing skills from me to someone else, to new environments, to different distractions, all of that takes a lot of good reps. So sometimes he may not be as fluid with me as he might be with home or certain bubbles that he's more comfortable in. So again, we're going to try once more to get that little sit. Yes, I'm going to go ahead and feed him. I'm going to tell him to wait. If the sits or downs were getting really comfortable, you could just ask for that sit, have him hold back, and then call him when you're ready. So ready, Allston, come. And then I'm going to go ahead and offer. Nice job. As he gets more fluid with recalls, like from the weight or from the environment, you can start to fade out your hand lowering. So in the beginning, if your babe is more receptive to visual hand signals, which most are much more visual learners than just verbal, you may find what helps Mr. Handsome is to start, again, in the beginning, offering that hand as a target to come into the hand. And then eventually you fade that out and you just would simply use his name and then come. If you prefer, some folks do like the word here versus come. So make sure you pick one that makes sense to you guys. So you could even for, let's say weights were getting too difficult. So every time I asked my dog to sit her down and wait, he kept getting up or wiggling. That would be a moment where, let's say this was too difficult, we could go into a find it and then from there do a recall from that. So right here, we're going to tell him to wait. I normally do wait as in wait a moment. He's like, I might as well get comfortable. If let's say he's going to get cozy for a moment, I might try wait. And then I might try adding a little bit of movement if let's say he's feeling more comfortable with being stationary. If this was too hard, I would not throw in movement on top of distractions, on top of duration, because that's going to be too many elements all at once. So, but right here, this is really pretty. I might go, ready? Allston, come. He's like, oh, getting up is so hard. I know, we're pooped out. We'll plop it on the floor, see if Mr. Handsome wants to get up. He's like, nope, that's too much difficult exercises. Ready? So if there's moments where your babe could be a little fatigued, so I know for him getting up once he's finally comfortable is a little bit more challenging. But this could also be, like what I mentioned earlier, a symptom of how he's physically feeling. Ready? So I might do another little find it, see if he wants to get up from there. But notice how getting up was a little bit more challenging. So for some puppies, their inability to respond quickly might also be a window into maybe how they're feeling physically too. So ready? Find it. So maybe being up and moving might be easier. And then from there, Allston, come. Yes, nice job. Miss K says, worst day, when do we wrestle again? Ready? Allston. So we'll do another little find it. So again, the benefit of rotating through sometimes weights versus recalls from the environment. Ready? Allston, come. Is you can kind of get him up and wiggling and be successful at the level he can manage for the time frame. But when working with the handsome guy, if there's going to be a lot of moments where he is struggling, oh, he says, good night. You may want to see how he's doing. Also keep sessions short and sweet. So for a lot of the pups, and I'll see if I can toss a few snacks for Miss K because she says nobody's playing with me and she's very sad without her wrestle partners. Not that she doesn't have her lovely Max with her, but she says, I would really rather have him play when maybe he's busy chewing on something. So with lovely Mr. A, definitely ruling out some of those things that I'd mentioned earlier for him might actually make sure that as he's maturing and developing, that he's going in the right direction physically, but also mentally. So, but with the weights or any skills similar, make sure that he's not doing so many reps, he's getting almost overtired, because then he could become sore. And then, of course, nobody wants to work out or practice if they're not feeling well. So just things to take into consideration when working with the handsome guy. 2, teenagers in general don't have the greatest attention span. So we may find shorter sessions for him in general, just like any other youngster, is going to be a lot more attainable for him, just like it would be another young dog or a dog that's starting with new skills. So right here, Mr. A says, hold up, I found a distraction. So Allston, come. Nice job. He's like meandering. Good work. So, but we'll give him a little break from this. And then I want to see if we could do a little bit of play and then work sort of that on-off switch again. But remember to definitely take a peek-see as to how he's doing. And if you're finding it's going amazing, just keep rocking it. But remember, training's not linear. So you're going to have moments where things seem to be going in the correct direction in the sense of his skill set and his comfort range. And then all of a sudden you're going to go from that. He's like, yes, I'm ready, into maybe he's not quite as comfortable. Ready? Go get it. So I would recommend to, if you are going to do a little bit of playtime, is make sure that, just like I mentioned previously with the flirt poll, is you want to do it safely. So anytime your dog is doing any playing where they're chasing, grabbing, being a little bit more rambunctious, we want to make sure that the floor or the environment in which you're practicing in has good traction. So you can see that again, when he goes to play, he does kind of do a little bit where he runs with both back legs at almost the same time. So that could also be a precursor to some of the back end thing that I had mentioned earlier. And don't worry, I'm not trying to pick on him. I just want to make sure that a lot of times we don't always notice sometimes physically what the dog might be telling us until they start going from whispering how they're feeling to then yelling. Choking on your saliva is also really helpful. Sorry about that. So with Mr. Handsome, the benefit, of course, working this dog-centric play, and I know poor Miss T, she's like, I would also like to play, is that this can be a great way to build in, of course, the play that involves biting, grabbing, chasing, tugging. But the benefit of working some of these things is you can then work that on-off switch. So let's say Mr. Handsome is doing a really nice job chasing and catching the critter. We'd want to go from this and see if we can get him to go ahead and drop it, give, or out. Remember, this wouldn't be the same as a leave it, because leave it's are going to be always off limits. Ready? So we might go into a nice little find it. You can, again, leave the critter on the ground as he's searching. I sometimes like to pick it up. He's like, I crashed. Then I might go into, are you ready? That's very nice. And he doesn't have to offer a sit, but sometimes sitting can be nice because then he's almost checking in. And then that could be his default behavior before he gets to go into wrestles. He's like, I've almost caught it. So if, let's say, there we go. If you go and lift it off the floor, make sure it's not so high that he'd be trying to leap into the air and he could potentially land funny. I want him to, if he is jumping to grab for it, it's a very easy and a small little lift off the floor. So, but right now, Mr. Handsome is doing a really nice job with some of his playing as well. So I'm going to catch that bad boy. Nice job. So like right about there, nice. Good boy. So, but play, again, could be another great venue for him. If he's more toy-driven, I know we've kind of mentioned this a little bit on and off for some of the students, is that having a toy as opposed to food at times can be another great way to rotate through different types of reinforcement. I know one of my boys would much rather play than eat food, and the other one's kind of the opposite. So you got to find, again, what motivates your puppy. A lot of times people are like, well, I gave them this, or I patted them, or I gave them some attention. The problem with some of that is that the dog may not find it as reinforcing as you do. And of course, one of them bumped into the fence. They're like, now what? So, but for Mr. Handsome, he's doing a really, really great job. I'm excited that he is registered for the next round of the Doggy Day School come September. He, again, will be then working some more skills there. So if there's certain things you're still having difficulty with, or there's something he's finding challenging, always feel free to check in. Ready? Nice job, sir. But I want to make sure that as he's progressing, we're diving into things that you're having struggles with, so he's going to keep growing in the right direction for you guys. But he really is doing a splendid job, and he does a wonderful job wrestling too, which is great. He's like, oh, winded. So we'll give our handsome man a little break. I'll just leave him here with his little friend for a second, and we'll give him a little time to rest and recoup.